first big topic as we review week 2 of the season. My question is, how big of a game changer is Romelu Lukaku for Chelsea? Andy, Lukaku bullied Arsenal. He was brilliant. His hold-up play was excellent. Scored on his second debut for Chelsea. How big of a difference do you think he will have this season for them? Is he the game changer they were looking for?
Yeah, even bigger than we thought. And we thought it was already going to be a pretty big deal when they signed him to be the one missing piece in the one position that they didn't have last season. Probably the difference between them being, just sneaking into the top 4 in the last couple games of the season and comfortably finishing in the top 4, and maybe even a season ago challenging for the Premier League title. Timo Werner had his struggles in season 1, and so Chelsea did what Chelsea do. If they bring in someone, even if they cost 50, 60 million and they don't perform right away, they will not hesitate to replace you. He's not a complete write-off at this point. He's going to have a place in the team this year, and he will contribute in a number of different ways, but it's not going to be as the main man. That role has gone to Romelu Lukaku, and so much of the player that he is now, it's been incredible to watch his career, because he first came onto the scene in the Champions League with Anderlecht, and he was 17 years old, turning 18, and he signs for Chelsea for a pretty big sum of money for a player at that age. It doesn't work at all. He goes on loan a number of times. He gets transferred out. He comes back to the Premier League. He's at Manchester United. He goes to Italy. He comes back to Chelsea. Now he finally scores his first goal for Chelsea, which is pretty incredible, 10 years after he first signed for the club. But the maturity and just the evolution of his game and him as a person that has occurred over these last 10 years, it's really been something to watch. And now he's at this point where you have to put him into the conversation with Harry Kane, Robert Lewandowski, anybody as the best number 9 in the world that's being considered and talked about. Lukaku has to be in there. And so you put that into this Chelsea team that has the structure, it has the experience, it has the pedigree already of winning the UEFA Champions League, and then you put in a player who's ready to achieve similar things himself at the prime years of his career, and it just feels like everything going on with this Chelsea team, the timing is perfect for every individual, the timing is perfect for the squad, for the manager. Everything they have done there feels like it's been building towards this moment this season when they aim to reclaim the Premier League title for the first time in 5 years. So Lukaku he's going to do that to a lot of teams this year. He's going to bully center backs all over the place. Arsenal, we talked about him a little bit in the intro. I'm worried for them, but this is so much more about Chelsea and Lukaku in this game.
Yeah, it was exceptional, and I had the chance to speak to Thomas Tuchel afterwards in the post-game press conference, and the thing that came to my mind and I asked him about was how he made the likes of Mount and Havertz in this game look even better and brought them to life and created space for them to run into and have goal-scoring opportunities. And Reece James's goal was a perfect example of Lukaku kind of dropping deep, dragging some space around him. Arsenal's midfielders didn't know whether to drop back. The defenders didn't know whether to go with him. They were scared of getting turned. Creates all that uncertainty. Then Mount, Havertz, boom, Reece James scores, and it's aside from his goals for me, it's his all-round link-up play. And yeah, that's what Thomas Tuchel told me. He said we didn't have anyone with his profile last season. And that's scary to think, as you said, Andy. They won the Champions League, the best team in the Premier League in the second half of the season by a long way with that structure and defensive base. And now they have not only his goals, but he gives them a total different dimension. And Tuchel said something to me as well I didn't think about. He said, now we have an option when we're under pressure. We can play long. He can hold it up. We can get out. And that's something I never really thought about. You think about the attacking ability of Romelu Lukaku, but from a defensive standpoint, he gives Chelsea an out ball as well, which they didn't have. So it should be even easier for them to keep even more clean sheets, which, boggles the mind to think about that. So, Nick, my question to you is, have we changed our minds about the title favourites yet? Because I know 2 of us picked Chelsea to win the title pre-season. One of us did not.
On me. Yeah. Yes. On me. The reason I thought more about it is not because of Lukaku, but because when I was making my predictions, I forgot that Chelsea's kind of had Man City's number. So it's not even necessarily that they've added this key piece. It's that did I overlook a matchup that I think this title is between those two teams, Liverpool having a shot, Man United having a shot. But I do think no matter what, it's a 6-point, they're within 6 points of each other. And if it comes down to head and Chelsea really does have Man City's number, then yes, I do regret it. But I like Man City a lot. I still think that they have another dimension to offer. The transfer window is not over. If this has scared them into making a move, the reason that I will never, I think I owe a debt of gratitude to Lukaku for this, because I never thought he was bad at Man United. I always thought this was a team that was on the it wasn't as good as they were used to, and they were taking it out on their striker. Because if he stayed even another year, not that Martial was bad, are they in the title discussion the next year? Because with the wingers they've had, apologies to when they're playing Dan James, I know it becomes my punching bag on this show, but Lukaku, Sancho, if Pogba's on the other side, they are scoring goal after goal with Bruno in the middle. So I bet there's a lot of regret. I know that Solskjaer kind of went by the idea of, well, he wanted to go and we weren't going to keep him. And I'm like, you weren't? He hasn't been bad at any team he's been on. It's been a long time since he's been described as anything but a model citizen. And I just wonder if his success doesn't put a little bit more pressure on Man United to get production out of their forwards.
So are you changing your mind on the title?
No, Man City. I got
Man City. Okay. I can see that still. I think as good as Chelsea have been, there is a kind of a little bit of a situation where maybe we're getting slightly ahead of ourselves. Lukaku was very good, yes. But Chelsea, they were great in the second half of last season. Confidence was flowing. They won the Champions League. And I just wonder whether we're getting too high on them too soon in the season. There's a lot of young players there. Yes, Lukaku brings experience. Jorginho, Azpilicueta, Rudiger. Obviously, Mendy's made a big difference in goal. But maybe we're doing Manchester City a disservice, because ever since Pep came in, 4 or 5 years now, they have been exceptional, been very consistent, very solid. And maybe, like you said, Nick, this forces them to go for one of the big strikers that is apparently available, that we're going to talk about later on in the show with the transfer news. Maybe that does force them over the edge and say, we need to do something here because Chelsea are going to be a problem. And Man City know that. They lost to Chelsea, 3 times at the end of last season in the league, the FA Cup, and the Champions League final. So they know all about the problems that Chelsea can cause, even without Romelu Lukaku, who was absolutely sensational. Andy Edwards, which other players are having a big impact early in the season? Because the other side of Manchester, for Manchester United, there's a couple of players really standing tall there, it feels like.
Yeah, certainly. And Paul Pogba delivering in a contract year the way that we have come to expect from Paul Pogba, that we've seen in flashes and moments, it feels like it's a little bit more sustained right now from him. And he's just able to. And I also think there's a huge element of the rest of the team has risen to Paul Pogba's level. And he now has players who can operate and think on the same wavelength as him. I imagine it's, I'll never claim to understand. I imagine it's probably a pretty lonely thing to be the one kind of creative or technical genius like he is in a team, and everybody else just not quite get it, not quite be able to pull off the things that you do, and you just maybe don't quite understand that. And so I think the rest of the team has risen to his level, and if there is a serious, genuine title contention this season from Manchester United, it's going to be on the back of Paul Pogba scoring 9 goals and 19 assists, putting up Kevin De Bruyne type numbers from a slightly different role, but he's really going to have to provide that production coming from the midfield. We'll see what Edinson Cavani has whenever he's able to come back into the team from international recovery and everything. So there's a lot to like about Manchester United, and Paul Pogba for me is probably the number one thing, because we've been waiting to see this since the day he returned to Manchester United, because we saw it at Juventus, we saw it when the tactical structure was set up perfectly for him, and then he went to United and it wasn't. He was just kind of a piece. Now they've built the team around him just a little bit more, him and Bruno there in the middle. So that's the key to success, I think, for United this season if they're going to challenge for the title.
I'm going to go with Virgil van Dijk in terms of players who have really had a huge impact. I mean, watch the 2 Liverpool games. Yes, no disrespect to Norwich and Burnley, but they're games that they are expected to win. And the way that he calms things down. Burnley played pretty well against Liverpool at the start of both of the halves of that game at Anfield. But Van Dijk just appeared from nowhere time and time again to snuff out the danger, to time his tackle or clear a ball of a header, or for the second goal, hit a 50-yard pass all the way across the pitch to pick out Harvey Elliott and get them on the front foot again. So for me, obviously, he's one of the best players in the world, the best centre-back in the world, right up there with the very best to ever play in the Premier League in that position. So it was a question mark about how would he come back after that lengthy knee injury he had. And he has answered all those questions and passed all the tests with flying colours so far. And I think that's huge for Liverpool. We're not really talking about Liverpool as title contenders, and that's probably just the way they like it under Jurgen Klopp. We're all talking about Chelsea, Man City, maybe Man United. But Liverpool have had a really solid start. And let's not forget, they finished last season incredibly well as well. And Salah and Mane had a full summer's rest, and they look very sharp as well. So those superstars there have been really, really good. Nick, any other players for you that have stood tall early in the season, or maybe a few that have flown under the radar and kind of ones to watch and players you've been really impressed with?
Well, I don't want to go with under the radar. I do want to just throw Martin Odegaard out there as a player who's going to fix an awful lot of things for Arsenal. That's one of the things. I don't think that'll make them into a contender, but you kind of see the pieces that are missing, right? We saw from Gabriel Jesus with in Man City's game what functional center forward play can mean to that team. I think we all know that, but I don't know how you talk about anybody other than Lukaku, Pogba, and Bruno Fernandes right now, because those are the three players from pivotal teams that have kind of dominated the discussion. Under the radar, though, anyone who's watched the show is going to know what this means to have me say this. Dele Alli.
Yep, I was hoping for it.
Is working his butt off.
Yep.
I imagine any coach who's ever had a problem with this is like, what is this? You can do this? Because he's in his own third. He's making tackles on the edge of the 18, and then the next second, like a flash, he's at the other end of the pitch. Just so impressed. And I'm not ready to say that he's the answer or he's back to where he was. I don't know how, as a Spurs fan, you aren't extremely positive about what he's looked like under 2 weeks with Nuno.
Yeah, I'm glad somebody else said it, and so that it didn't come from me. And we didn't rehearse that or talk about that or anything. So it's just sure. I think it is a really good point, because that has been the missing piece to his game. He was very much a maverick type player when he was younger in his career. When he first broke through at Spurs, 19, 20 years old, he had a kind of a fearlessness. Like he wasn't afraid to fail at that point of his career because he didn't really know any better. And so I think a little bit of that was I don't know if it was taken out of him, whether it was forced out of him, or whether it's just kind of a natural, growing up process and maturation where, you do understand the consequences and the things that are on the line. And so you begin to change a little bit. And I think what the best part of his game has been lost over the last few years. And so it's been really heartening to see him almost, not reinvent himself, but apply himself in a different way, as Nick says, in a way that the previous managers would have really loved to have seen from him. Because if he's able to play as one of those three in the center of midfield, and he doesn't have to be just underneath the striker, he doesn't have to be out on the left cutting inside, that's a lot of tactical flexibility for Nuno to have with this team, who could play 4 at the back, he could play 3 at the back, he could play 3 in the midfield, he could play 5 in the midfield, and Dele can perform a lot of different roles if that work rate and the defensive, the defensive duties are there. And so far, we're 180 minutes in, and he's played all 180 minutes, and he has run as hard as he possibly could for all of them. So, fingers crossed, a big season from Dele Alli, could really be what helps Spurs challenge a Liverpool or a Manchester United, maybe try to pick off a top 4 finish.
I'm going to chuck out 2 surprises here for me. Number 1, Everton, how well they've done under Rafa Benitez, because they are unlucky not to win away at Leeds. Look really dangerous. Damari Gray looks like a great sign-in. Obviously, Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison are the X factor, and they're so solid. They've had a couple of mistakes from Michael Keane early in the season to concede the two of the 3 goals they have conceded. But overall, Everton have looked really, really good under Rafa, and I think they could push for the top 6. It might not be that fun to watch, but it works. It just works. They are good going forward. They will cause problems. They got players who can hurt other teams. And then it's just all about cleaning up those mistakes at the back for them. And Rafa is very good at doing that, organising teams. So I think the longer the season goes on, Everton will be a horrible, horrible team to play against, and they're going to win a lot of points at home at Goodison. And the other point, West Ham United. We all know they're good. They haven't bought a lot of players over the summer, but Moisey's doing it. They're top of the league, 2 wins from 2, scored 8 goals. Mikel Antonio, became their all-time leading Premier League goal scorer with those, well, two incredible goals against Leicester City. And the celebration was just as good with the cardboard cutout of himself, obviously holding it up. And what a player, what a character, what a lovely bloke. And West Ham, I think you look through that team, and you say that about a lot of their players. They're genuine, hard-working players. You know exactly what you're going to get from them week in, week out. And the only thing with them is in the Europa League group stage this season, can they do that week in, week out? Have they got the players to rotate a few in and out of the team and still stay solid throughout the whole season? I'm not sure if they have, but they've started the season really well. And what I love about them is this is a proper David Moyes team. They sit back, soak up the pressure, hit teams on the counter. When they do that, they make it count. They're clinical, make the right decisions in the final third. So been really impressed with West Ham and Everton. I think it's about time one of those two teams really did push hard. Maybe not just for the top four, but, you know, for the cup competitions or whatever. Maybe they're both in, obviously West Ham are in European competition. Everton want to be there. So I think they have underachieved for a while now, and they're really on the cusp of being two tough teams to beat with some very, very good attacking players who can do it week in, week out. All right, gents, a lot going on in the Premier League here at Pro Soccer Talk and NBCSports.com. We'll keep you covered with all the latest news, 10 things we learned, video analysis, recaps, highlights. We have it all over at PST, so make sure to go over to that site.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch highlights all season long, and be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend at 7 a.m. Eastern. And for even more content, head over to Peacock, where we've got live games, original series, and a dedicated round-the-clock Premier League channel featuring studio shows, classic matches, and much more.